Wow, that was diabolical. One of the worst Chelsea performances this season. And to be honest with you, if we continue to play like that, we can forget about any chance of challenging for a title. Look, Fulham are a good side and they made it very difficult for Chelsea. But we absolutely could have avoided that outcome today. I'm not sure we were good enough to win. I'm not sure about that. And that's the issue, isn't it? Against Everton, weren't good enough to win. Against Fulham, weren't good enough to win. Look, I know I've said we're in a title race, and by the points tally, we were. When we looked at other teams that had been on similar points, we had to say we were in one. But I didn't see a downturn in performance like this game and like the Everton game on the horizon. I just didn't see it. The Brentford win gave me confidence that we'd stepped away from last season. Look, Chelsea have just lost to Fulham 2-1. We've lost in the dying minutes to our neighbours. I don't think they're rivals. Yes, it's a derby, but I think it's a way bigger game for them. Back in the day, Chelsea and Fulham fans, they used to be friends. It was always a bit of banter, but we never hated each other. And I still don't think Chelsea hate Fulham. I think Fulham are a little bit jealous of the fact that Chelsea have stepped away from Fulham, obviously, in the last 10 to 20 years. That's their first win at Stamford Bridge since the 70s. And, I mean, you could see how much it meant to them. That's something they've wanted to get over Chelsea for quite some time. And I have to say, fair play to Marco SIlva and his Fulham side because, look, I said it when Marco SIlva first ever got the job at Hull, that I think that's a guy that is destined for the top. I still believe he is one of the most underrated managers in the Premier League, and he absolutely made Maresca and Chelsea have a nightmare of an afternoon today. Tactically, he made it so difficult for Maresca, and ultimately I think that's why they won the game. I think what he did tactically with his switch up with Iwobi, his switch up with Anthony Robinson, and the way that those two overloaded our left-hand side, or right-hand side, sorry, and their left, it ultimately made it impossible for Maresca to try and figure out a way to deal with that and allow Chelsea to attack in the way that we've been so good. Neto was practically pinned back all second half. And yeah, it was a diabolical afternoon. And Marco SIlva, like I said, can walk away with his head held high because he's got 3 massive points there for Fulham. Look at where they are in the table. They are absolutely flying. But look, we'll get into it. I have to say, off the bat, obviously, Cole Palmer scored a fantastic goal today. Wilson and Muniz obviously scoring the goals for Fulham. But look, Enzo Maresca, for me, a lot of today falls on him, to be honest with you. I think the way we were set up, it just wasn't really good enough. I think the burning question everyone's going to have is, and I know I'm going to be asked this until we play again on Monday, are Chelsea still in the title race? That's the burning question. At 1 point out of a possible 6, that's not title form. It's barely even top 4 form. It's not good enough. I thought the result at Goodison was okay if you went and corrected it with a win against Fulham in a tough game. The fact that we've now lost that game from a winning position and then obviously had a poor game up at Goodison, neither look very good now, do they? That draw really doesn't look that helpful. And a diabolical afternoon for Chelsea. But look, we'll get into it because there is a lot to talk about. I'm gonna try and delve into everything here because I think we really need to look at this because I thought Chelsea had stepped away from this in recent weeks. So we're going to get into this and have a good look. So stick with me. If you haven't already, make sure to drop a like. We'll go for 40 likes on the video like we always do. And make sure to subscribe if you haven't. We're on the road to 4,000. If we could get there before the end of the January transfer window, that would be absolutely amazing. Let's get straight into it, shall we? Because it didn't start that bad. I think Cole Palmer, for me, might have scored. Look, it's not his best ever goal for Chelsea, but on the eye, how satisfying that was to watch. That is right up there. It was so calm. It was a bit reminiscent of Hazard and a bit reminiscent of Joe Cole. That type of goal that we know both those players are capable of scoring. The way he turned away from his men, he had them battling on behind him, and then he just slots the ball through the player's leg, and it's such a calm finish, and he hits it so early that Leno just cannot plant his feet quick enough to set himself to dive, because by the time he sets his feet, Palmer's already hit the ball and it's rolling past him into the net. It's a fantastic finish. And I just thought we were going to go onwards from there. And for a spell in the first half, I actually think Chelsea probably should have scored another goal. There was a couple of moments where Neto did really well on the right-hand side to work across and no one was really there. Jackson obviously had chances, but they probably weren't good enough to get us in a position to be leading that game by more than one goal. And then obviously that came back to bite us. And that was really where it kind of ended for Chelsea. It was on the back of the first half. We went in at 1-0 and thought, right, can we go on from here? And Marco SIlva obviously absolutely understood understood exactly what he had to do for the second half in terms of tactical adjustments. And I don't think Maresca, one, was expecting it to happen, and two, just didn't know how to react. So let's have a look, shall we? Because I think this is absolutely massive in the reason that Chelsea lost the game. So, look, we'll load up, first of all. What I'll do, I want to show you this quickly, is Cole Palmer's heat map, because I think this will be really important going forwards. If you look, a lot of his heat map is predominantly, if you imagine there's a line through the middle of the pitch, if you look at where the dots are in the 18-yard boxes and in the centre circle, most of Cole Palmer's heat map is predominantly to the left-hand side, which we'll get onto in a bit, but obviously scored a really good goal today. A fantastic goal. If you haven't seen it, definitely go and have a look. But let's look at this, shall we? Because this, for me, was key. In-game management, overriding issue. That is the main reason we lost. Marco SIlva, in the second half, decided to allow Alex Iwobi the freedom to step right up onto Chelsea's defensive line. Exactly where Malo Gusto was. That occupied Gusto. Gusto was dealing with Alex Iwobi because Iwobi was leaving behind Enzo Fernandez. Enzo Fernandez was pushed up so much further. I'll bring up the heat maps because I've got them and I want to try and show you guys this because there's not the photos. But if we look at Enzo's heat map, if you look at where Enzo is, predominantly, he is much higher up the pitch. We've seen him in this advanced sort of 8 role before. He almost is allowed to push up into that 10 pocket, and his defensive duties have been removed. We all know that's how you get the best out of him, but obviously, Marco SIlva realised that where his defensive duties have been removed and Caicedo is pretty much playing in there on his own, that allowed Iwobi to step into that gap behind Enzo Fernandez and push right up onto Gusto. That meant that Anthony Robinson on the overlap, like we see here in this photo, was able to bomb on and create the double overlap, which then meant Pedro Neto, one of our main attacking outlets, had to track all the way back pretty much all second half. And he was absolutely exhausted. You could see him 9 times out of 10. He looked absolutely exhausted. And then no change come. And the longer this went on, the more and more likely it looked that this Fulham double up and overload was getting the better of Chelsea's right-hand side. We look a bit all over the place. If you look here, Gusto has pretty much come imagine Gusto's in the back line. He's gone all the way out to Iwobi because he was pretty much man for man with Iwobi, and Iwobi was dragging him around. And Gusto's gone all the way out here to deal with Iwobi. He's tracked him all the way into the middle of the field. That means Anthony Robinson's bombed on and Neto's had to track him. Well, that's what's happened here. And this moment was what eventually repeated itself and led to the goal. Neto ended up getting beat down the line. They work across, they head it back inside, and Harry Wilson scores his goal. And this, for me, was coming. It was inevitable. And the change just wasn't coming. And I was looking at Maresca, and he was going to his iPad, and he just couldn't see that, or he could maybe, but his reaction to it was his usual reaction, and it was this: calm down, wider, calm down. He wants his touchline wingers wide. He wants us to get on the ball, slow it down, remove the erratic behaviour, control the outcome of the game. That is Maresca. That is so key in his philosophy. And you know what? We've actually been really good. I think back to that Tottenham game, and I think that game got a bit erratic. Maresca kept saying, slow it down, get control. And it almost looked like we were guaranteed to go and win the game. What was lacking today was the output. It really was. And little tactical adjustments that I think win you a game of football here. And for one, that is Pedro Neto with Anthony Robinson was pinned back so much. It was constant sprinting. If we wanted to go forward, Neto had to bomb on. If Anthony Robinson was on the attack, he had to track back. That's not Neto's game. He's not a wing back. And for me, Gusto's far more suited to that. And what I would have done is either add an extra centre-back into the defensive line and allow Gusto to stay with Robinson. And then basically, if Iwobi pushed up into the defensive line, they were marked out of the game. I think you could have quite easily done that. You can almost see in this picture, if I just move myself down a little bit, just above me, Cucurella, he could have almost moved over into a back three, which would have allowed Gusto to obviously deal with the overlap of Anthony Robinson. Tosin would have been able to deal with Iwobi if he pushed on, leave a Colwell with Muniz, and Cucurella could have defended the other side. And then obviously, you've kind of got a defence that's a little bit more balanced. Or what you could have done is just completely take Neto out of the game, go to three at the back, leave Cucurella and Gusto as wing-backs to deal with the Fulham width that they had, and add an extra centre-back in. Look, I know it's Disasi, but maybe that's what would have been needed to make sure Chelsea got the 3 points, because 3 points is way more valuable. And I just think we've thrown it away today, because I feel like that attacking situation, it's way easy to see, obviously, with the moving images, but I just feel like it could have been dealt with. And what this ultimately did, by Neto being the guy that had to track back, we basically just removed any attacking output. The other thing I've seen Chelsea do at times, especially last season under Poch and a little bit this season, is invert Cucurella into the midfield rather than higher up like he's done today. And that allows us to get an extra body in midfield. But we didn't even really do that in the second half. And look, ultimately, we didn't do a lot of things in the second half. That's why we lost control of the game. But I think this image is so important, because you have to understand that this battle is absolutely key. Gusto went man for man with Iwobi, pretty much tracked him, and ultimately I think Iwobi probably won the battle, because the overload of Neto and Gusto going man for man just absolutely confused that Chelsea back line, and they didn't really know what to do, and it made them act in an erratic fashion, which obviously meant that the team wasn't able to stay on the ball, and we were acting erratically. And Enzo's philosophy is about being calm, and it just didn't happen. But when I look to the bench, I think, you've got to try and change this up. You've got to do something. You know what he did? He took Jackson off and brought on Nkunku, and that was the only change. Nothing else. And that's not good enough for me. And against Everton, the changes, they really didn't do much, and they were very late. Look, Madueke weren't on the bench. I don't know why that is. I don't know if he's training great, because Maresca's obviously touched on that. He's looked and not decided to bring on João Felix as well. Does he trust his bench? I'm not really sure. And that's a big worry for me. And then we'll move on, because obviously this is pretty much how the second goal came about. We'll go on to the final goal, because this is bad. This is really bad. Robert Sanchez, like I said, game's erratic. Who is one of the most erratic players on Chelsea's pitch? Well, it's Robert Sanchez. And for me, this is just something that's happening time and time again. I actually praised him the other day, because I think shot-stopping wise and just his all-round keeping ability and actual performances have been a bit better in recent weeks. And I think even today, he wasn't diabolical. But when it comes to decision-making with his feet, there is a real issue with Sanchez, and it is time and time again. And we've kind of got away with it a little bit this season, that he's made mistakes. It's not really led to much. Sanchez gets the ball on the right-hand side. If you imagine where Enzo is in this picture, just draw a line straight down. That's where Sanchez is. He's out of his goal. There's no one there. He smashes the ball into pretty much no man's land. And you know what goal this for me is a little bit reminiscent of? Is first game of the season, Manchester City, when Wesley Fofana goes up to that similar sort of area of the pitch, kicks the ball into no man's land, Kovacic picks it up, away he goes through our midfield, and he ends up scoring. This is pretty much what happens for Fulham here, even though it's a little bit further away. But realistically, as soon as this ball goes over the top of the Chelsea defence into this area, Levi Colwell turns round to Sanchez and he's like, What are you doing? Why would you do that? You've killed us. Cucurella's absolutely bombed on. Look at how high Cucurella is. And Nkunku barely moving, by the way. This is the issue for me when you bring on Nkunku for Jackson. He is not a striker. He doesn't act like a striker. He doesn't want to go and contest balls that are coming in. But Sanchez, for me, needs to play that ball straight up the line. He plays it across field. It's not good enough. It doesn't hit the fullback out or the winger out on the other side, which I think was Sancho. Goes straight into the Fulham area of the pitch where they have more numbers than us. Look, they've got 3 players inside Chelsea's. Chelsea are committing forwards. It's just diabolical. And then they go up the pitch. Ball gets played into Muniz and he finishes a really good chance, but it's one he can't really miss. It's so late on. Chelsea are sort of out of the game by this point anyway. We've sort of given up. The momentum's against us. And we concede. But we could have drawn that game. And Robert Sanchez, for me, has literally cost Chelsea a point today. I don't think he's cost Chelsea 3 points, but he has cost Chelsea a point. And that's the problem that then falls back on Maresca is you keep giving him a chance. This is how he's repaying you with giving him a chance. And for me, that's just absolutely just not good enough. I want to just show a couple of individual performances today that not necessarily brilliant, but I think had a massive impact. So let's look at them, shall we? Because first up, we've obviously got Enzo Fernandez. And I think this was key. Enzo Fernandez has been so good in recent weeks. But Enzo Fernandez, I mean, this is really to do with how Chelsea set up prior to the game. Not how you react to stuff that's going on in the game. This is beforehand. This is obviously what Enzo has drilled into them in training during the week. This is how we're going to play. This is the area you're going to occupy on the pitch. If you look at Enzo's heat map, for me, this is, if you look at where, just ahead of the centre circle to the right-hand side, is a huge area there, a dense area of where he's occupied the majority of the game. For me, that is, okay, look, defensively there's an area there as well. But for me, that's the biggest issue here. Because I look at that area and I think, who is best in that area, and if not a little bit further ahead, it's Cole Palmer. That's where Cole Palmer operates and causes absolute issues for teams in the Premier League. Yes, I know his goal today comes off the other side, but actually when we're on the ball and we're looking to attack and we're looking to create, Cole Palmer thrives in this situation where he can open the pitch up onto his left foot and he can see everything, and then behind him is pretty much either a fullback or the touchline, and he's covered. He feels a little bit safer. When Cole Palmer's looking the other way, I just don't think you get the best out of him. And Enzo was pretty much deployed in what I believe is Cole Palmer's best area of the pitch. And straight away, that limits Chelsea. I think we've seen in recent weeks when Enzo is on the left with this very similar heat map, he's scored goals and he's got assists. When Cole Palmer is on the right, he does the same. And I actually think that's when Chelsea have looked at their best. And that's when I talk about Maresca has moved away from a system that I think was winning us games. He's actually tried to meddle a little bit too much, and I think it's cost us. And I just think you flip that heat map round, that's actually how you're getting the best out of Enzo Fernandez. In that 8 role that allows him to attack that dangerous 10 pocket. Don't let Cucurella attack there. Let it be him. If he goes forwards into that pocket there where it's that densely red area just on the other side of the pitch, I think he thrives. I think he does really, really well. That then allows someone like Cucurella to come and sit in next to Caicedo and just give him a little bit more protection, to be completely honest with you. We didn't do that today. Cucurella went further on the left. And the idea, I think, was to try and keep Cole Palmer in the 10. However, if we look, Cole Palmer's heat map, it's off to the left. You can see that. Enzo's basically taken his position where he's bombed on. Cole Palmer's had to go out to the left. Yes, he got a good goal today, but all round, away from the goal, that's not one of his better games. And I've been saying this. This is going to kill Cole Palmer if you keep playing him there. It's just not where he looks at his best. And I think if he's obviously our best player, why would you not play him in the area that he absolutely looks best? And by removing him from the area that Enzo Fernandez was in, I think you're killing a huge amount of attacking threat in this Chelsea side. I think the idea is maybe he links up better with Sancho, but it just isn't working. They don't need to be next to each other to link up well on a pitch. They can be aware of each other and where they are on the pitch. Away from that, and this is frustrating because I don't understand why we've done it. I'm confused, and ultimately it cost Chelsea going forwards, and we look way worse. But a massive reason for that is this, man. That heat map for a number 9, that's not good enough, guys. I'll be real here. I thought for a while this season that Jackson's trajectory was going completely in the right direction. I thought, okay, maybe it was the right decision that we didn't bring in another striker in the summer. Maybe we just need a slightly different profile to compete with Jackson. Today I'm questioning everything. Because I would say since he scored the goal against Villa, his all-round game has been on a decline. It almost looks more like Jackson from last season. His touch, the way he's controlling the ball, his dribbling, his passing, everything's off. It doesn't look good. The areas of the pitch he's occupying, it's not great. It really, really isn't. He still gets an opportunity, but it's now what he's doing with the opportunity is bad. And I'm starting to see Jackson, like the confidence has gone. He's getting himself down. We saw against Spurs how disappointed he was to come off. He was disappointed again today. He's as big as his critic. He really is. And I think that's affecting him. But when you're at a top club, you have to be elite. You have to be better than that. And that means that Chelsea either have to go into the market to find a different type of profile that allows us to change the game up, which would have been very useful against Everton, or you have to go, okay, Jackson's good, but is he going to be good enough to take us where we need to get to? Do we replace him? And for a while this season, I really thought Jackson didn't need replacing. We might just need a different profile. I'm not sure now where Jackson stands. Jackson's got some work to do. I'm not jury out, but show me you can go again, Nicholas Jackson. Because right now, it's not good enough. And Nkunku coming off the bench, that's not good enough either. I'm not sure whether Jackson was a little bit worried about Nkunku when he was scoring goals. Now Maresca's come out and said, I don't view Nkunku as a striker, whether Jackson got a little bit comfortable. Because there is a definite downturn in how he's been playing since he scored that goal against Villa. He's just really not looked at it. And today was really bad. Really not great. I will touch on this. And for me, this is the reason Fulham won the game. And in the second half, I think this was so key. Is if you look at Iwobi's heat map, it's not identical to Enzo Fernandez, but it's quite similar. If you look at the area, it's kind of like very, very similar sort of pattern, just a little bit more out to the left, because I think he was linking up well with Anthony Robertson. But it basically meant that in behind where Enzo Fernandez was in the second half, that's where Iwobi was. And that meant that either Gusto dealt with Iwobi, but then that allowed, like I said, it allowed Anthony Robertson to bomb on round Gusto. So then Neto had to start coming back. And it just killed everything for Chelsea going forwards on that right-hand side. And it basically nullified us because Neto's obviously been a huge outlet for Chelsea in Maresca's system. And this was an amazing tactical change from Marco SIlva, and I wonder how this affects us going forwards, because is this a weakness that we've got to learn from going forwards? If other managers do this, how do we cope? But this is Iwobi's heat map, and I think he had a really good game today, and I think arguably, yes, they scored the winner once he was off the pitch, but I think this led to Fulham getting the momentum that they had, pinning Chelsea back, making Chelsea panic, making Chelsea erratic. Chelsea lost control of the game because of what Iwobi was doing, along with Anthony Robertson. And I have to say that, yeah, he ultimately found a lot of space in an area where Enzo Fernandez just wasn't willing to work back to, where Gusto had to step out of the back line, and where Neto had to be pinned in to help with this overload that Fulham created on that left-hand side. And it was diabolical in the end, and it led to us losing. But the biggest points for me on Enzo Maresca are, why have you gone away from a system that was working? Yes, I understand Fulham were causing us some concern, but I think you could have done that in a way that meant you don't lose your attacking output in Pedro Neto. You either change it up and move to a slightly different system. But maybe this is what the Leicester fans were saying about him having just one way of playing and not having the idea of how to change it up if it's really switched up. You know, if your team loses possession, this is where a pragmatic manager like Marco SIlva actually managed to get a step ahead of Maresca and end up winning the game. I think Jackson obviously had a lack of threat today, so going forwards it's never helpful. Our bench clearly isn't being trusted at the moment and is starting to look a little bit slim. Considering how good it looked at some points this season, I'm not nearly as confident in the bench as I was. Madueke, Felix, look, they're not getting many minutes at the moment. Maybe they play on Monday against Ipswich, but I don't really know. I have to praise Pedro Neto today because I don't think it's his fault. I actually don't think a lot of the players are to blame today. I think they've been set up in a way that didn't allow them to win the game. I think some players haven't performed well, like I mentioned, but I really think a lot of this is on Maresca tactically. I just don't think he got to grips with it. I'll praise Neto for his work rate because that's just not his type of game, and you can see that. And I think if you actually allow Pedro Neto to play too many 90 minutes like that, like he did at Wolves, where I think there was a lot of trucking back, that's when I think his body looks he looked very worn out, and that's why fresh legs would have been really helpful today, and it didn't happen. And I also think that that's how Pedro Neto's injuries creep in, because that's the sort of game that wears him out. He goes again on Monday. I think you're playing with fire there. I'll praise Cole Palmer for his goal. It's honestly one of the better goals I have seen. I love a goal like that. I think it's absolutely brilliant. It's very Bob. It's very calm. It's very cool and collected. It's cold. And I have to praise him for that. I think it was an unbelievable goal. One of my favourites. I'd probably put that in his top 5 for me. But honestly, not good enough. Chelsea have to do better. Monday's going to come round quickly, and we've got to be ready for it. Ipswich is going to be a difficult game if you underestimate them or you don't prepare well. Maresca says he watches five games of previous teams, or of the team we're going to play, of their previous games. I think if you watch 5 games, you have to be aware of what that team's going to do, unless they introduce something completely new. So surely with that preparation, we can do better than what we're currently doing. Look, Chelsea aren't out of a title race. We're still there. We're still sitting where we are in the table. But this is what we were talking about. Sorry, is this team ready? We just don't know. Look, like and subscribe if you haven't already. And I will see you very, very soon. Because like we know, at this period of the year, the games just keep on coming. I will see you in a bit.